What's up, guys? It's the champ, Sean O'Malley, here to talk to you about Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best place to win real money while watching football. Create a lineup, pick more or less on at least 2 players. You can combine players from multiple sports: football, basketball, MMA, soccer, you name it. We got it. Prize Picks puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my lineups hit, I can get my money as quick as 15 minutes. Prize Picks invented the flex play, so you can still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit.
Right now, Prize Picks will give you $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Just download the Prize Picks app and use code GOAL. That's code GOAL on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play a $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. Must be present in certain states. Visit prizepicks.com for restrictions and details.
What up, y'all? It's Joe Budden here to talk about Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best place to win real money while watching football. Season-long fantasy can take so much time, but on Prize Picks, I can pick a new lineup every day. The app is really simple to use. To create a lineup, pick more or less on at least 2 players. Prize Picks puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my lineups hit, I can get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. On Prize Picks, you can mix and match players from different sports. Combine your favorite players from football to basketball to hockey to WNBA. Prize Picks is the only daily fantasy app with injury insurance. If your player goes down in the first half, Prize Picks won't count it as a loss.
Right now, Prize Picks will give you $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. Just download the Prize Picks daily fantasy app and use code GOAL. That's code GOAL on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play a $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. Must be present in certain states. Visit prizepicks.com for restrictions and details.
Back and forth. Oh! He broke his ankle. Throws. It is caught. Touchdown! Drop back to goal. It's picked up. Touchdown! Defense stands under pressure. Ball is straight.
This is the Meangene Show
on ESPN 97.5 and 92.5
from the Veritex Community Bank Studios. Here's Meangene.
Welcome back, everybody. You are listening to the Meangene Show on 97.5 ESPN Houston. I am your host for the day, Jacob Meadows. Mr. Meangene could not join us due to him being a little under the weather. But this is hour 2, and we are about to kick off my favorite segment of every weekly show, the What Had Happened Was.
So what had happened was...
What had happened was...
What had happened was...
What had happened was I was a little disappointed that the Houston Texans couldn't make this list after beating the Patriots today. However, your other neighboring Texas team did get this one. So the Detroit Lions absolutely dismantled the Dallas Cowboys today. It's been a very up and down season for the Cowboys. Shout out with all the love to AJ, our resident Cowboys fan. But they got absolutely buried by Detroit. Dallas couldn't get out of their own way. It does seem that they have so many problems that are mounting up, and it's getting pretty bad. And we are going to burn a full segment on this just because I love the Cowboys and I love how much AJ loves the Cowboys, and I know Meangene here in spirit loves the Cowboys. So AJ, what had happened?
What happened? I mean, they're just, what's it called? Like I said earlier, they're just not built to win. I mean, I'm not surprised. The offense is very one-dimensional as well too, because like we talked about, they don't have a running game. So when you don't have a running game, I mean, you know that they're gonna drop back every single time. That gives the defense energy to rush the passer and things of that nature. And I hate that Aiden Hutchinson got hurt, but shoot, he was feasting, getting pressures on the Cowboys' offensive line. Like they couldn't do anything. Even Zach Martin, it wasn't to Aiden Hutchinson, but even Zach Martin let a sack happen. Like it was just overwhelming. So yeah,
it's nuts to have seen Dallas's offensive line become what it has. You know, I know your childhood, my childhood, that was Dallas's bread and butter, right?
Exactly.
Like they had the best offensive line in the league. That's what they did the best. They won in the trenches, either on offense or defense or both.
Right.
Dallas was good in the trenches, and now you see an offensive line that you can't run block. It's like 5 Laramie Tuntles out there all at once, right? They struggle to run block every now and then, and it's getting bad. I mean, Rico Dowdle has been good in spurts. He's very streaky, right? Like Geno Smith, like you said earlier. He's a streaky player. Once Rico gets hot, Rico can be a great player.
Yeah.
So can Kevondre Turpin. So can Dak. Right? Got to. But it's one of these things where you've got to. Jerry Jones has got to be freaking out right now. I mean, this is his love child, right? He did this. This is his.
Yeah, he said, I saw some statement he said after the game saying like it was very humbling. He was shocked or something like that. I mean, how are you shocked? I mean, of course, you know the injury stuff, but I'm not shocked because of how you built the team. I mean, it's not a surprising thing. I just don't understand why he acts like this and then he just acts surprised. Like, obviously, you're doing things one way. You're too prideful. Obviously, they're going to lose like this when you construct a team in that nature.
Well, I mean, you take a look around the rest of that division, right? The Commanders are building a team. You bring in rookie Jaden Daniels. He still has Scary Terry on contract. Like, the Commanders have an offense that is good. Like, they have multiple pieces that you can use, so if one thing fails, another thing may work. The Giants, something very similar, although Danny Dimes did just figure out how to play quarterback again. But, like, you have that. You have Danny Dimes. You have Darius Slayton. You have Malik Neighbors. You have Devin Singletary. They brought in to play running back. You have the what's his name? Tracy Batty.
I know they have Wandale Robinson, too. He's
also Wandale Robinson. But, like, it's multiple weapons. And that's the biggest takeaway in the division, right? The Eagles, Devonta Smith, A.J. Brown, Saquon Barkley.
Goddard, too.
Dallas Goddard. It's not just CeeDee Lamb and Jake Ferguson.
Right.
Like, what? How does Jerry Jones not look at this roster going into this past offseason, right? Like, after last season ends, going into this offseason, how does Jerry Jones look at this roster and he's like, yeah, this is going to win it all.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying, especially after the Green Bay game, too. Like, that should have been the wake-up call, the humbling sign there. And then they basically had 3 showings of that at home this season already, from winning every single home game until the playoffs last year. Now you haven't even won a game at home yet. So,
I mean, Dallas is going to make the playoffs, more than likely. I'm going to knock on wood on that one because the Commanders are pretty hot and Philly got all their players back.
Right.
So it's going to be a dogfight. But if Dallas goes to the playoffs again, like we said earlier, that's going to kill your draft stock.
Right.
You're not going to get a
unless you want to trade up, but that's killing your future draft stock.
Who are you going to mortgage? Yeah, exactly. So you have that to worry about. But if you make it to the playoffs, you're the same team that you've been for the last decade. There's no way to move out of that. And Dallas it's just this big circle of mediocrity that Dallas is stuck in. And I feel bad piling it on you over and over again. We're just talking in circles at this point. I feel so bad.
That's right. I'm numb to it.
Good. Most Dallas fans are.
Yeah.
Right. But no, like, I wish there was an easy answer, right? Like, I wish there was a way that you could look at this Dallas situation and be like, no, Jacob, like, this is the obvious path that they're taking. It's a rebuild from the inside. It's a soft rebuild, right? You can see the pieces here, and here. But that doesn't seem to be the case. Is there any young talent on this team, offense or defense, that you are excited to see the development for in a season that might be a lost season, but might also not be, right? Is there any young talent that you could just see being the next cornerstone?
So we can talk about defense. Overshown, I've been high on him since last year. In training camp last year, before he got injured with that ACL in that preseason game, he's been a really good player. So I'm excited. He is still able to wreck the game. But, I mean, obviously, the injuries and things of that nature, he's had to step up. But, there's going to be a drop-off, obviously. And then they drafted Maris Lafu out of Notre Dame. He's pretty solid, too. And also, they had Eric Kendricks. He was hurt in this game, too. So, a lot of responsibility on players like him. And then, even young players, Deron Bland coming back, that's going to be huge. Yeah, it really is. Him with Diggs. But one thing I noticed, too, about Diggs, I mean, he's been solid, in terms of, limiting wide receivers and stuff like that, but he just does not like to tackle.
No.
Oh, my gosh. He does not like to tackle at all.
He does kind of fare away from it, and that sucks because there's so many people that reach that level, and he does. It is a pitiful effort to tackle 9 times out of 10. Like, it sucks. Like, you're the Dallas. It's America's team, brother. Like, you gotta hit somebody. Like, y'all need the tackle. Like, you need to stop them. But do you think? I don't know. What do you We're almost to Separation Sunday. We're getting a good look at the divisions, right? Like I mentioned, the Eagles and the Commanders are both good. In your opinion, what do you want Dallas to pursue this offseason? Whether it be the free agency or whether it be the draft, what do you think would be their most immediate needs?
Well, I told you about the draft. I mean, obviously, running back, that would be cool if they could get JT. I guess it just depends. Like I said, even if they have a mid to lower draft pick, if they really want him or a running back like that, you'll trade up. You do all you can to get that player. But for me, free agency wise, You want to see what you can get on the wide receiver market in terms of the wide receiver number 2, things of that nature. Possible offensive line depth, just in case, because you never know. And I mean, I've been happy with like a guy like Cooper Beebe at center position. He's been nice, but
he's been good.
Yeah, I like him for sure. Guyton, he's been a little streaky. I think he'll have some development. He's 6'8". You can't teach size. You just got to continue to get discipline in him and get him better, teach him mechanics. And they still have Tyler Smith, who's really good as well too. So just like getting some more offensive line help defensively. Really, there's a lot you can do there. I guess just like more secondary depth. Definitely defensive line. That's one thing. Like you said, the trenches. That's the main thing. I've been a little pleased with Mozzie Smith. He's been playing better the past few games.
He's gotten penalized a couple of times in inopportune times.
Right. He has
that up.
Since the New York game, though, he's been playing better, though. I'm glad how he's progressing, but definitely like defensive line, things to that nature. I think they have more linebacker depth now this year, but there's just a lot of different things going into it, and the injuries don't help. So
the Van Der Esch injury, I felt left a big hole in there. Like you can't just replace that. He was good.
Yeah, he was good.
Of all the current Cowboys players, I liked Van Der Esch. There's a reason he's not playing though, right? Like
he retired.
There's a fine line between being too aggressive and being good at your job, and it felt like he took his job very seriously. He was very good at what he did, and it ended up breaking his body in the end.
Yeah, which sucked.
But y'all, the Cowboys have a pretty poor history of linebackers here lately. Jalen Smith ended up not being the injury, but Jalen Smith, you have Van Der Esch. They're bringing in these high quality talents, and they either get hurt or just aren't what they were supposed to be.
Exactly. I forget that player they drafted in 2017 or something like that. That first round pick, he was a Michigan or something like that, but he ended up being a bust. I forget his name, but
not totally sure.
He played defense. I can't think of his name right now, but yeah, he was not a good pick. So they hit on a lot of draft picks, but there'll be every once in a while those who end up being a bust and things like that. So I
mean, every team goes through that. It's just they're America's team, right? There's always a
more attention.
Exactly. Jerry Jones puts them out there to the public, hey. Look at us, we're the best.
Yeah.
And then they're not. They fail to meet any sort of promises that they give out.
Exactly.
And that's been a whole lifetime for me. That's all I know. But of the rest of the games on Dallas' schedule this year, are there any that you're circling on your calendar? Right. Are there any that you're just excited to see, or it's just another year as a Dallas fan?
I mean, the whole season has been the same for me, honestly. I mean, just watching the game, just seeing what's going to happen. I mean, if they win, I'll be happy about it for the day. But I don't how some people, some sports fans make it like the games, the outcomes, control their mental health, stuff like that. I just don't even get that captivated into it.
It's just a game,
right? Exactly. It's whatever at this point. I mean, I'm obviously happy when they win, but when they lose, I'm not necessarily surprised. Especially today, because I felt how they were playing offensively at first, they could match them, but the miscues happened, and then I already knew what was inevitable. That 47-9 score, exactly.
So there is the game on right now. You have the Bengals and the Giants playing right now, and I will say Dallas does still look better than the G-men. So there's always that chance, man. As long as you're not in the cellar, it's a win of a season for Mr. Jones.
Yeah, but that's not the expectation, though. I mean, not to be
sure,
especially by what he tries to place on us, and just all the chatter and stuff. But yeah, it is what it is at this point. Because, I mean, for every, 2021, 22, 23 season for the Cowboys, 12-4, there's a 2019 season, a 2020 season, 2017 when they missed the playoffs or something like that. So that could just be this year, which, I mean, it is what it is. Because those seasons, after the 2020 season, we got Micah Parsons. So, we'll see what happens.
The best is yet to come.
Yeah,
right?
I hope so.
Well, all right. So we will have Mr. Dustin Phifer joining us here in a little bit we've got a couple more segments before he joins, but we are going to shut this one down. You are listening to The Meangene Show on 97.5 Houston.
Duggar.
You're listening to The Meangene Show
on ESPN 97.5 and 92.5.
For the Veritex Community Bank Studios, here's Meangene.
Welcome back, everybody. This is the Meangene Show on 97.5 Houston ESPN. Again, I am not Meangene, but I am doing my best to be him. I know the resemblance is uncanny, but, I am a different person. But we had a cool conversation last segment. I mean, I love talking to AJ about the Cowboys. Nothing brings my heart more joy than talking to you about the Cowboys.
Appreciate it, bro.
But we're going to jump into something that surprised me a lot this week, honestly. So the first game that we're going into is going to be the Chicago Bears and the Jacksonville Jaguars. Caleb Williams is the truth. That is true. But the Jaguars are the kings of London, right? Since we've been going to London each season in the NFL, the Jaguars really do reign supreme. They are much better at traveling to London for whatever reason. They are normally a dominant force. And you have rookie Caleb Williams under the helm for the Chicago Bears. So in no reality did I expect this game to go the way that it did today, because the Bears absolutely pummeled Jacksonville. This was never a close game. Travis Etienne gets hurt. And it was almost as if Jacksonville didn't show up to play. You hear these reports coming out that the defense quits on the team in the second half. Doug Peterson's seat is getting incredibly hot down in Jacksonville, which sucks for him because I don't necessarily think this is all on him. But you had a lot of things going on in this early game. It was on super early this morning. It was like 9 a.m. Central Time-ish. I'm not totally sure if that's correct.
Like 8:30 when it started, but yeah.
8:30, yeah. There you go. But I did not see this coming. I definitely thought with Caleb Williams being a rookie quarterback, right, I guarantee that dude has never flown to London to play a football game, right? It's got to be hard. Players get jet lagged after they've done it a dozen times. So the way Caleb Williams was able to come in and command this offense was nuts. I mean, I know Cole Kmet was his leading receiver. It was a lot of checkdowns, but Caleb looked amazing. You can't pin it on any one thing. Caleb looked really good today.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And he needed this game. He's been playing better the past few weeks. So if you're a Bears fan, that's some encouraging news because especially in the NFC North, you're going to need to win as much as possible to try to make the wild card. And even then, you might not even still make the playoffs because how loaded that division is.
No kidding. And the Bears are sitting at 4-2. I mean, they are doing well within their division. You know, there was all this hype in the preseason, like, yeah, Caleb's going to take us to the Super Bowl. This is the next big thing. We got the guy. And I was as doubtful as anybody should be because he's coming out of college, played at USC. Like, there were very obvious issues in his game. Bro, Caleb Williams is a stud.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I mean, he's drafted number one for a reason. Now, the Super Bowl talk, obviously, is delusion. But
yeah, temper it. But,
right.
Man, he looks – it is not unrealistic to think that he could make a wild card.
Exactly.
Like, I mean, they have a lot to prove. It is only week 6. Mm-hmm. But Caleb Williams looks significantly better than I would have expected him to, and he's doing it both through the air and on the ground.
Right, exactly.
So you see Keenan Allen getting in for a touchdown. He and DJ Moore have terrific chemistry already. You have Rome Odunze, who came in, also a rookie out of Washington. Caleb likes him. He's a very good target for him. These are all big guys that are good at catching the ball. They can all high point. They can all run good routes. And it just looks like as much as there was talk when Chicago wasn't playing well in the beginning of the season, Caleb Williams and the Bears are poised to have a good year, and they might be trending in the right direction this season.
Right, and they supplied him with a lot of weapons. That was the chatter before the season started, so that was honestly a great thing. You always want to set your quarterback for optimal success. Now, you can still say the offensive line is a little, questionable at times, but they're playing better as the season goes, so that's a good thing. And I know you said something about it only being week 6 because you know how I say like getting early. Well, when it's like around 7, 8, 9, 10, that's when I'm like, okay, it starts to like you said, Separation Sunday. You start to get a good feel of how teams are going. So we're definitely getting there. So
this really might be the most competitive Bears team we've had in since Jay Cutler? Give or take?
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah,
really.
And that's nuts. Mm-hmm. That is absolutely. Jay Cutler was tough as nails, and it's been a long time since we've seen someone like him in Chicago.
Exactly.
So.
I think they made the playoffs in 2017, 18, something like that, and they almost won the game, but they missed a field goal or something like that.
That's right. It was the one that had dinked off the goalpost at the very end. Was it Robbie Gould, I think?
I think
that might be a lie. I think he was at the 49ers. But yes, I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, it killed the confidence of the kid. Mm-hmm. The whole city of Chicago hated him. It was this whole thing because that was with MVP Mitch. Yeah. Mitchell Trubisky was the quarterback. Right. Yeah, that was the magical run when Khalil Mack was on defense still. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, things are looking up in Chicago. And on the flip side of this, right, Jacksonville, what happened to the Jaguars? I'm sad Meangene can't be here, and I have to speak on his behalf for this one. But we were incredibly wrong about Jacksonville. Both of us thought that they were going to be a lot better than worst in the AFC South, and I have no idea what's going on. They're falling apart at the seams.
Right. I don't think it was unreasonable to have that expectation. I mean, because they have a solid defense. Trevor Lawrence, adding Gabe Davis, have Christian Kirk, Evan Ingram drafted Brian Thomas Jr., so they have the weapon. It's just like the small things it comes down to, especially in the first few games, and then now they're starting to implode. So that win last week was good, but you're 1-5. Like,
yeah, 1-5, and it's looking bad. And it's like, you know, they already tanked for Trevor, right? They got Trevor.
Yeah.
They tanked for Trevor, and they got Trevor, and Trevor wasn't the answer, right? They thought, oh, you know, we're going to draft a young quarterback who's going to sail us off into the Super Bowl sunset. And as good as Trevor Lawrence has looked at times, he's still unpolished. And you got to wonder if it is coaching. I mean, Urban Meyer did not help the development of any player on that team when he was in Jacksonville. But now you have Doug Peterson, a Super Bowl winning coach, step in. And Doug Peterson's losing control of his locker room, it seems like. And it begs the question, like, where do the Jaguars go from here?
It's really hard to tell, to be honest, because, like, can you salvage your season? I don't even know if you can, especially in the AFC. The Texans are clearly running away with the division, too, so it's like...
And it'd be hard for them to leap the Colts. I mean, I know
exactly.
Joe Flacco is turning back. Joe Flacco is the greatest old quarterback outside of Tom Brady
For
ever.
sure.
He's so good at this. But, like, they have Joe Flacco, and even once Anthony Richardson is healthy, right? They're good. They've already said that they'll bench Joe Flacco. It is AR's team. He's going to get his opportunity once healthy. But you can't give me any sort of response to the fact that the culture's not going to be better than the Jaguars with AR under helm. Like, just because they're switching back to him, like, he is a better quarterback. The Colts are a better team. This is a lost season. Jacksonville has no clear-cut path to salvaging this year, in my opinion.
Exactly. You telling me they're going to win 11 games in a row? Like, I mean, they could be like 9-8 or something like that. But I doubt that. Like, you have to win
a significant amount of your games.
And get
Yeah, exactly. You have to get hot, and you have to sustain that. You know, you can't have Travis Etienne getting hurt every single game, which seems like it's been. And you can't have all of this. It's just very inconsistent. Trevor Lawrence, another streaky guy, just like Geno, like you said. Like, Trevor Lawrence can get hot, but he hasn't been hot very many times this year. And his wide receiving core is feeling it. You know, I thought when they went out and they got Gabe Davis from the Bills to replace Calvin Ridley, I thought that was an interesting move, right? But then they drafted Brian Thomas, who is a bona fide stud. He's very, very good at football. But even he, I mean, albeit it was in London, and, you know, maybe the Jaguars just got the London bug real bad this time, but there were a lot of drops. There was a couple of fumbles. Like, the Jaguars looked very dysfunctional today, and that is probably the biggest, like, oh no, in the AFC, outside of the Cleveland Browns, which are on a totally different plane of their own. But Jacksonville's that one beat at Cleveland where you're like, what is happening? Like, how did we get here?
Exactly, both 1-5 now. It's frustrating because, like we say about Trevor Lawrence, he's super talented. At times, he does miss a ton of reads too. Like, that's the thing about it too, as a quarterback, especially year 4 now. Like, you should be developing into being one of the better quarterbacks in the league. But it's just, especially that second season they had when they played against Kansas City in the playoffs.
Exactly,
that was an encouraging year. But
it's like he's regressing, and there's no reason why that should be happening, right? Like, the coaching staff has changed, sure, but, like, at the end of the day, you're Trevor Lawrence. You were that guy that led Clemson, and you were the GOAT, right? He was the next Peyton Manning when they were touting him out, and then he gets here, and it's hard to understand because, honestly, outside of having, like, a clear-cut large man number 1 wide receiver, right? Like, I think T. Higgins would fit well on this team just because of his size and his ability around the red zone and this, that, and the other. Yeah. But outside of missing that guy, because you have a rookie playing that guy right now, Jacksonville's not really missing anything. Their defense is good. They've got good pass rushers. Their D-line is good. Their secondary is not bad. Their linebackers are not bad. I have no idea what's wrong with them, and I'm beginning to think it's coaching, and I feel bad for Doug Peterson, right? There's a reason he got chased out of Philadelphia. I didn't understand it at the time, but it is starting to look like, maybe it is coaching. Like, it's time for them to reset the clock on the coaching staff.
Right, exactly. And that's what I was just thinking, because when you have the personnel and you aren't executing to the way you should, it does come down to coaching at that point. But it's just like, I don't know either, because also at the end of Eagles' tenure, it was a lot of dysfunction with Carson Wentz and all that too, so it was just a whole huge mess there,
Well, it's also not Doug Peterson throwing the ball, right?
That's true too.
You watch these games week in and week out, and you see a lot of Trevor Lawrence. It's either way below or way above the receiver.
Right.
So Doug Peterson's not throwing that ball. If I'm not mistaken, he played quarterback in the league years and years and years ago. He's not the one chunking the ball up in the air. Like, Trevor Lawrence has been inconsistent. Like I said, Travis Etienne has been hurt a lot this season. He was never meant to be a 3-down back. And they're doing well supplementing him with Tank Bigsby. But Tank Bigsby can't do it all alone, and Travis Etienne, when he gets hurt in the first quarter in London, like, you're really setting your team up for non-success, right? Because you're never going to get the run game going. And if you can't do that, Chicago does have a top you can name any number, but Chicago definitely has a top 10 defense this year. They have played just lights out.
Oh, for sure. Even last year, too.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, they always have a good defense.
Eberflus, too. He's a good defensive coach, at least, if nothing else,
It's very true, yes. But I don't know, man. I like the Jaguars to a point, right? Like Texans first, same division, so I hate the Jaguars. But I like the Jaguars. I like what they do. I like a lot of players they bring in. I don't know how to fix them, and I think that this is going to be a bad year for Jacksonville. I think they pull off maybe 3 or 4 more wins this season en route to really finding that identity that they really need to refine, because without the run game and without, I don't know, a consistent number 1 at receiver, I think that they are starting to flounder, and that is not going to do them any favors in the AFC South that is getting better by the week.
Exactly, and in the AFC in general.
Exactly. The AFC is more loaded now than it ever has been, and this is not the way that you want to play the game, because they were in the playoffs a couple years ago. This is a team that goes through a cycle. I mean, they lost that Super Bowl. What was it? Lost in the AFC Championship in 2018, correct?
Yeah, 17-18 season.
Yeah. Blake Bortles, one of my favorite players of all time. Alan Hearns was on that team. They fell just short. That defense was prolific, and then they had the Super Bowl slump of sorts, right? They didn't make it, but they slumped real bad after that, and things have never really picked back up. And it's hard to watch because I do like parity. I do like the competition, and they are bringing none of that to the league right now. I don't know. It's hard to watch.
Oh, very. It is.
Hey, Dallas is better than Jacksonville, bro.
Yeah.
Sort of.
That's bare minimum.
But, all right, everybody, we are going to go ahead and close this down. I'm lying. We are not going to close this down. Don't shut this down yet. Chargers at Broncos. I missed an entire team here. So we have not San Diego. We have the LA Chargers and the Denver Broncos. You have Jim Harbaugh leave in the first half. He was a little sick. He ended up coming back. Justin Herbert looked good, threw for more yards than he has at any point through the rest of this season. It's time to hit the panic button on Sean Payton's Denver Broncos. Bo Nix has looked terrible, and they have a lot going on for them. It's going to be a tough year for Denver. Chargers look a little better, but I don't think that they're going to actually be able to push the Chiefs in that division.
I agree. Yeah, the Chargers, they'll probably finish second in the division, but it's the Chiefs. It's been the Chiefs division since 2018 when Patrick Mahomes started. So
Crown's going to sit on their head for a couple years
right.
more. Yeah. But all right, we have Dustin Phifer joining us in the next section. This is the Meangene Show on ESPN 97.5.
This is the Meangene Show
on ESPN 97.5 and 92.5.
From the Veritex Community Bank Studios, here's Meangene.
Welcome back, everybody. You are listening to the Meangene Show on ESPN 97.5 Houston. I am your host today, Jacob Meadows. And joining me here momentarily is Mr. Dustin Phifer, co-host of the Sports Kings pod with Mr. Meangene and an NFL analyst at Bailey Sports Southeast. One of my favorite people to talk to. He knows more about football than almost anybody that I know, and he is really good at what he does. Everybody, please give a warm round of applause for Mr. Dustin Phifer. What is up, dude?
Well, what's going on, Jacob, man? Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. I hear that Meangene's under the weather, so I guess I won't take any shots at him tonight. I'll give him the night off, and we'll just talk some football.
Oh, man, you can send as many shots his way as you want. Honestly, the only reason he called in tonight is because I am burying him on fantasy, and he didn't want to face me in person.
Yeah, I figured that had to be it. His Dodgers are playing. You know, there's just a lot going on for him right now.
Exactly. It's a hard life. Meangene's got a hard life, man. That's what it is.
Absolutely.
But, hey, dude, seeing as how you're our resident Panther expert, definitely wanted to break down the Falcons and the Panthers with you. I thought that the Panthers have looked decent with Andy Dalton, but there are very obvious flaws. And of all the people that I know in this world, I know you can break Carolina down better than anybody. So what are your takes on today's game? You know, they played the Atlanta Falcons, lost 38-20. Atlanta is seen as a powerhouse in this division, more or less. The Panthers were seen as what was probably going to be the bottom of the cellar. Did you like what you saw today out of Andy Dalton, out of Chuba Hubbard, out of this offense and defense? Did you like what you saw out of Carolina?
Yeah, listen, this game's it went about as I expected. I mean, I thought at home the Panthers would hang around for a little bit. I still think the offense is playing pretty decent. I think they have a a very strong running game. You mentioned in Chuba Hubbard. I think he's actually been one of the more underrated running backs so far. I mean, the guy runs so hard. He's averaging 5 yards a carry, and they honestly could probably run it with him more. And, so again, I liked what I saw from the offense. Deontay Johnson played well. Xavier Legette got his second touchdown as a rookie. I really think he's going to continue to develop and be a really good wide receiver in this league. So I like what I'm seeing from the offense. And then, the defense is just a completely different side of the ball. Like they did sacrifice in the offseason by letting go of Brian Burns and Frankie Louvu to use that money to shore up the offensive line on offense, which is they needed to do that to get the offense. So they did make a sacrifice. And then on top of that, once you make those sacrifices, now your depth's not as good, and they have been ravaged with more injuries in this league on defense, probably than any team in the league. Derek Brown, week 1, their best player overall in the team, is out for the season. They've since lost Shaq Thompson for the year. They've lost Josie Jewell. They've lost another defensive end. They've lost a corner. I mean, it's injuries right and left, and they just can't keep up. So they hang around in these games, and they do the best they can. And then the teams just seem to take over in the end, and that's what Kirk Cousins and the Falcons did. So kind of how I saw this game going, and you're right. From what I've seen with Kirk Cousins these last couple of weeks, he didn't have a big game today, but he managed the game. This was the Kirk Cousins that the Falcons were looking for, and I think it's a two-team race between them and the Bucs of who's going to win this NFC South.
I have to agree with that. The Bucs have really the Bucs impressed me a lot today, and I'm actually going to jump into the Bucs before I let you go. That was a good game. Spencer Rattler surprised me with New Orleans, but I mean that game went the way that it was supposed to go. But with Carolina, before we make that jump, right? Because the Panthers are who I really want. For you, Andy Dalton's all smiles, right? This is the happiest we've seen him since the Marvin Lewis era. But do you think the Panthers are going to be able to right this ship? I mean, naturally, they're not going to be playoff contenders next year, right? Like that's not in the books, more than likely. But do you like what you're seeing out of your young developing players and the progress that they're making towards becoming, a cohesive team? Are you liking, despite the losses, right? Because they are learning to handle adversity. But are you liking what you're seeing outside of Xavier Legette? Because he has looked really good. But outside of him, are you liking what you're seeing out of the young guys? Like that they're pointed in the right direction, and maybe this team could turn the tide in 2, 3, 4 years, as opposed to just being in a perpetual state of rebuilding.
Yeah, I've actually liked what I've seen so far. And again, Panthers fans, it's tough for them to say, hey, it's going to be a couple more years because it's been 6 years of some of the worst football in this franchise's history. So they are ready now for a turnaround, but it takes time. And when you make mistakes, and that's why the previous coaching staff got fired, that's why the previous GM got fired. The GM should not get a job. Scott Fitterer should not get a job in this league again with what he did with this roster. It was just malpractice. It was just unbelievable. So Dan Morgan comes in. He's got to right the ship. And again, he pays $100 million to guards, which I really think has been a benefit. If you look at it, the Panthers have had a top half offensive line this year so far. It just doesn't show as well because of the losses. So I like what they're doing. I like the direction that they're headed in. You mentioned young guys. Chuba Hubbard's still young. We haven't even seen their rookie that they drafted in the second round, the running back from Texas, and Jonathan Brooks. Everybody thinks that when he comes back healthy, that he will end up being the number one back, which is saying something because of how good Chuba Hubbard's been. So I think they kind of hit on their draft picks. Ja'Tavion Sanders from Texas has made some decent plays. You've got, like I said, Legette, who's starting to show more and more. And then Deontay Johnson, even though he's not as young as some of these other guys, he's up for a contract year, and he's played very well. I wouldn't be surprised. Everybody's talking about him possibly being traded. I could see the Panthers possibly re-signing him. I like what they've done on offense. So this is just a process. They kind of got the offense going in the right direction now in this upcoming draft. I don't think it's about a quarterback. I mean, even though they don't know what they're going to do with Bryce Young yet, Andy Dalton's getting older. If Andy Dalton continues to play halfway decent, I could see them running the veteran route for another year and letting him run the ship because that's what Dave Canales is used to. He's used to a veteran in Baker Mayfield. He was used to a veteran in Geno Smith. So I could see them going the veteran route for another year with Andy Dalton if he stays healthy, and then building this defense in the draft so you can get both sides of the ball up. And then another year down the road going and getting that young quarterback again because who knows what's going to happen with Bryce Young, but I think his time in Carolina is done. He may get a chance later in the year because of a sorry record from the Panthers and not winning a lot of games, so he may get that one more chance. But I just think it's kind of run its course, and it's disappointing. When you trade up all that stuff to get Bryce Young, when it flops, it's going to take a while to recover, and that's what they're working on right now. But the one thing I will say is I really like what I see from Dave Canales. He calls a good offensive game. He's got good energy around his team. Guys are balled in, even though that winning, they're playing hard for 4 quarters. So I do think they are headed in the right direction. It's just going to take some time.
I agree with that. I think Dave Canales was a terrific hire. I mean, like you said, despite the losses, right? Because they're not winning a ton of games. But it does seem like the team is bought in and everybody likes what's going on in Carolina, which is arguably just as important as winning games whenever you're not winning games, right? It does seem like Dave Canales has cultivated a winning culture almost without having to win games, and that bodes well for the future, right? Like that's a sense of optimism for this team.
Absolutely. You got to start the culture somewhere, and the fact that they bought in, even though they're still only 1-5, and listen, they were in a close game with Cincinnati. They were in a one-possession game here in the fourth quarter with the Falcons, and they're just a team that doesn't have the depth to really finish these games, but you can see they're starting to develop that culture to be in a 4-quarter game, which is a big improvement considering what we saw the last couple of years where before halftime, the game was already over for the Carolina Panthers.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what they end up, blossoming into once all of this really starts to come to fruition and Dave Canales can build, once he starts actually getting his own people on the roster and what have you, after a couple of years in the team, like it'll be nice to see what Carolina does because they're looking up. I mean, again, they're not going to win a ton of games right now, but I do like where Carolina is heading. And they do have a lot of good little pieces. And like you said, you've got so many injuries on defense that, once all these guys come back, it's going to be a totally different team. It's got to be because a lot of the stars are the ones that are hurt. So you have the new stars that are formed now, and you have the ones that were already veterans on the team that are coming back. And Carolina could be good next year. Not 15-win good, but pretty good, in my opinion.
Yeah, and that's what we talk about on the Sports Kings all the time is that, it really in the NFL, you can go from being a non-playoff team to a playoff team in a year. This is the one league where you can turn it around quickly if you make the right decisions in the draft and the right decisions in free agency. And again, I think they've started that process. It may take another year, maybe 2, but I like what Dan Morgan's done in his first year as a GM. He's hit on his draft picks. He's hit on some good free agents on the offensive line. So they're headed in the right direction, and maybe in a year or 2 they can compete with what the top 2 teams look like now with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Atlanta Falcons.
Yeah, exactly. I completely agree. It's just one of those things that, they're doing the right things. But speaking of the Buccaneers, that is going to be the next game that we jump into. However, we are running a little low on time for this segment. So would you mind coming back for the next segment, Dustin? Would that bother you too much?
No, absolutely. I'm here for you, man.
Sweet. All right, so we can go ahead and jump in. We've got about 45 seconds to go ahead and start breaking it down. We can wrap her up on the final segment of the show. But so Spencer Rattler gets his first start with the New Orleans Saints, right? Derek Carr's out 3 to 4 weeks. Tampa Bay's defense is wildly known for being good against rookie quarterbacks. Did you like what you saw out of Spencer Rattler today? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah. Just real quick, but I liked what I saw. I think the fans have actually been wanting to see him, and I know the game got out of hand, but I like some of the stuff I saw, and I think he has a chance. We've seen this before when quarterbacks get injured. You come in and play well, you can take that job, especially for a guy like Derek Carr who is up and down. And so I think it was a good first start, and I think he's got a chance in these next few weeks to really try to continue to improve and maybe win this job long term.
Sweet. I agree wholeheartedly with that. And with that being said, we're going to go ahead and shut down this segment. You are listening to the Meangene Show on ESPN 97.5.
You're listening to the Meangene Show
on ESPN 97.5 and 92.5.
For the Veritex Community Bank Studios, here's Meangene.
Welcome back, everybody. This is the Meangene Show on ESPN 97.5 Houston. I am your host, Jacob Meadows. I will be rejoined here shortly by Mr. Dustin Phifer to close this thing down. We are on our final segment of the night. Thank you to everybody that has tuned in. We've had a lot of commotion, a lot of traffic in our chat room. It has been really, really cool. Thank you all for listening today. But Dustin, welcome back, dude.
Hey, man, glad to be back. Glad to keep talking about what's going on around the league today because as I tell Gene all the time, man, these weeks are flying by and these games just continue to get more and more important week in and week out.
We've had a lot of good ball lately. This year has been very, very good to us in terms of good ball, both college and professional.
Yeah, it's been a lot of parity, even in college football, but especially in the NFL. And I think this is what the NFL thrives on: is that week in and week out, even the good teams. I mean, you just don't know if they're going to come away with the win. A bad team can beat them one week, and the next week they can look like world beaters. So it's fun to see. And listen, these playoff races are probably going to be about the closest they've been in a long time.
You're not kidding, especially for the NFC South, right? Like this is a particularly interesting division right now because, I mean, I know you love your Panthers, but we've got teams like the New Orleans Saints and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers with the divisional clash. And the Saints were winning at halftime, despite Derek Carr being out for multiple weeks and Spencer Rattler starting his first game. You know, the Saints were hanging in there. It looked really, really close. Baker Mayfield had 3 first-half interceptions. The Tampa Bay eventually ended up figuring it out. The second half, they blew this game wide open, right? But in terms of seeding through 6 weeks in the NFL, and again, I had to leave Separation Sunday for next weekend because I couldn't do that without Gene. It's one of those things where the Buccaneers, I think, really did separate themselves from the rest of this division today. Do you feel the same about that with what you saw this week? Like the Buccaneers look good. The Buccaneers look really good, right?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I don't. The only reason I will say that they haven't separated themselves is because what happened last week. The Falcons getting that win at home over the Buccaneers in overtime and already having that leg up on them with 1 game left is a huge advantage to possibly help with that tiebreaker. Like, they had to win that game at home against Tampa Bay on a Thursday night. So, listen, Tampa drops 51 points, looks great, and Atlanta doesn't look that great, but they get a win in Carolina. I think these two teams have definitely separated. Now, as far as who's on top, I continue to go back and forth. I had the Falcons as the favorite going into the season. I just think when you add a Kirk Cousins, a veteran like that, that's really what that team was missing. They've got the weapons. They've got the running backs, the tight ends, the receivers. They just needed somebody to throw them the ball. And Kirk Cousins comes out slow. He looks 40 years, a very old quarterback coming off an Achilles, so I started getting a little worried. But these last 2 weeks with him going for 500 yards against Tampa Bay and then coming back and playing a smart game and running the ball and making plays downfield today, I just think those two teams are hand in hand. And I actually, even though Tampa looked great in New Orleans, I would give the slight edge to Atlanta, again, because they already had that 1 game in hand against Tampa. And I just feel like if it comes down to it, who am I going to trust more? Now, neither one of them had great playoff success, but I would probably trust Kirk Cousins more in a big game than I would Baker Mayfield.
I can agree with that. Baker's turned the ball over a lot the last couple of weeks. So that would be my one hang-up, is that in terms of consistency, right, Captain Kirk is definitely – he is the definition of consistency. He is what he is, and he has been what he is for a long time, whereas Baker's very up and down. And you really – like, you know you're going to get everything from him, but you don't know what that actually entails until the week of the game, right? So
exactly.
Yeah, I definitely –
the other thing I would say, too, is, and I know that Tampa Bay's running game continues to get better each week with Bucky Irvin. I think he is a very good rookie. But, man, I watched that 1-2 punch today with Bijan Robinson and Algier. Yeah. And really, Algier was the number 1 back, and they kind of brought in Bijan number 2, which is kind of surprising. I mean, when you have a two-headed monster like that and then have a veteran like Kirk Cousins there as well to do that play action, that's what Kirk Cousins thrives off, is that play action. So I think both of those guys, I know Algier had 100 yards, and I think Bijan had 95 and 2 touchdowns. I mean, they are just a 1-2 punch, and that's a good combo to go with Kirk Cousins. So I think it's going to be a race that'll probably come down, honestly, to the final week of the season. That's how this division always does. But I would give a slight edge to the Falcons right now.
Honestly, I have to agree with that. The Falcons probably have the best running back room in the league. I completely spaced from that because, Bijan and Algier are a crazy duo. When, they took Tyler Algier before they ended up drafting Bijan. And honestly, it depends on the week, but there are plenty of weeks where Algier is the better back, which is nuts considering where Bijan was drafted, what was expected of him, and the fact that he is actually really good at football.
Yeah, I mean, listen, and then you had the combo of Bijan catching out of the backfield. You had a Drake London, and listen, Kyle Pitts. I mean, me and Gene talked about on the Sports King show. We're still waiting for him to live up to that potential, and he's slowly starting to get better each week. They just got weapons kind of all over the place, and I'm not saying the Bucs don't, because you obviously got Godwin, who's just playing out of his mind right now, and Mike Evans. So they have the weapons as well. I'm not hating on Baker because the turnaround that he had has been tremendous, and he's cemented himself as a starting quarterback. I would just put it's towards Kirk Cousins in a big game.
You would have to. I mean, just based off of experience alone, yeah, I can't poke any holes in that logic. That's pretty airtight. But I've got...
Yeah, those are the only two teams I got making it. I don't see even though the Saints are playing decent, and we'll see what happens with Spencer Rattler, I don't see them getting a wild card. Obviously, I don't see the Panthers. So those two teams will be battling for the division lead, and who knows if one of them can get a wild card, but I think that winning that division is going to be the best bet.
Yeah, when the season started, the Saints started so hot. You look at them, you look at what Derek Carr was able to do the first 2 weeks of the season, you're like, this is good ball. These guys are good. And they are on a spiral of epic proportions right now. And now Derek Carr's out. So, like you said, you have a rookie that might end up taking his spot as the QB1, but that doesn't bode very well for postseason success, right? Like the Saints look like they might be about to enter a soft rebuild of sorts, and they've got a lot of young talent, but it's time to kind of phase some people out, some people in. You've got a lot of people making a lot of money that you don't necessarily need if you're planning for the future. So yeah, I mean, New Orleans definitely down the third team in this division, and it just feels like that's kind of going to be the way it is for the foreseeable future.
Teams in the league to start the season, so I was shocked how they came out of the gates and now starting to regress back to the mean. And I think they will go into a soft rebuild, make some changes. I think they need a new head coach. So a lot of big changes coming if this keeps up in New Orleans.
Absolutely. Yeah, I also think that a coaching change is going to be needed down there. There's some wacky stuff in New Orleans, dude.
Yeah.
I've got one more game for you, Dustin, if you are interested. We've got the Bengals-Giants. It is the game that is on right now. There has been very little movement. The Cincinnati Bengals are winning 7-0 over the New York Giants. Are you watching the game currently?
I am watching the game. It's a weird game. You're right. I mean, how about the first drive? Joe Burrow hardly ever scrambles. He comes out, he runs for 57 yards on the first drive. One of them's a long touchdown run where the defense just completely misses them. And then that's all we've seen since. I mean, you got to give the Giants credit. They're playing some very good defense on their home turf. Obviously, once again, the same problem for the Giants, their offense. Daniel Jones, they can't really get anything going. But neither have the Bengals after that first drive. So this is a very weird game, sitting at 7-0 to start the second half. And once again, this is a danger zone for Cincinnati because they're 1-4. I still think they're a playoff team. But if they somehow mess around and lose this game tonight, I think this could be the end of their season. So they've got to make sure they don't continue to play around and only stay at 7-0. They got to put this game away and get a win.
So that was actually my next question: is if you're kind of worried about Cincinnati this season, because naturally since Joe Burrow got there, like they start slow every year, but this year feels a little different. Yeah, if they lose this game to the Giants, this might be a lost season for the Bengals. And it's weird considering how little turnover they actually had in the grand scheme of things outside of Joe Mixon. I mean, they lose Tyler Boyd to the Titans. Joe Mixon goes to the Texans. But they didn't lose that much. And this does have the feeling of a slightly different Bengals team than what we've had previous years under Joe Burrow.
Has been struggling. I mean, they're playing better tonight, but they have really been struggling. But Joe Burrow, I mean, listen, Joe Burrow is playing Joe Burrow football. If you look at the last 3 or 4 weeks, he's been one of the best quarterbacks in the league. They have just not been getting wins. And that game last week against Baltimore, again, showed me that they took them toe-to-toe and really should have won that game, that they can be still a contender in this league. But again, you got to go out there and do it on the field. And if they can get that defense just to be average with the way that Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase is finally back after doing that little holdout. He seems to be back 100%. T. Higgins is back. And I just think they can make this run. I've looked at their schedule the next few weeks. It's pretty soft before they go and play Baltimore again. So they've got to start stacking some wins. And it starts tonight by not messing around in New York and making sure they close out this win. If they can get to 2-4 and get to another couple of soft games coming up, they can get right back to that 500 mark and make a run. I'm a big Joe Burrow fan, so I'm not counting the Cincinnati Bengals out yet.
See, despite the record, right, because you have Pittsburgh that's doing great things somehow at 4-2. You have Baltimore that looks like a juggernaut most weeks, right? Like they've been beat, but they look amazing. You really think Cincinnati can climb out of this hole and give them a run for their money?
I don't know about for the division, but I think they can definitely climb out of this hole and get a wild card spot. And listen, I'm not trying to throw shots at Gene's team because I have no room to talk with what I cover in Carolina. But I think a lot of people would agree that even though the Steelers are 4-2, that's not a pretty 4-2. I mean, even though they kind of pulled that game away today, they struggled against the Raiders a little bit. Justin Fields continues to be up and down. I wonder what's going to happen there. They still can't run the ball great. Baltimore is a contender. I think Baltimore will probably run away with this division, but I could see Cincinnati staying in this wild card race because, listen, we see it week in and week out with these teams faltering, and I think if they could just put a little winning streak together, 2, 3, 4 games, they're right back in this to get one of those wild card spots.
Nice. Okay. Well, I guess that's all I needed you for, Dustin. Thank you so much for answering all my questions. Thank you for coming on the show today, despite the Meangene being out, scared of my fantasy football prowess that he has to deal with right now. It has been a pleasure, dude. It is always a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for coming on. I hope you have a great night, Dustin.
I appreciate it, Jacob. Thanks a lot, man.
All right, everybody. We've got one last little leg for you. We have Monday Night Football coming up next tomorrow. It is Sunday. Coming up tomorrow, you have the Bills and the Jets. It is an AFC divisional game of sorts. The Jets are kind of coming on hotter. They've looked better recent weeks, but they have a lot to do. The Bills are coming off of the big loss to the Texans. And, it looks like the Bills are kind of starting to find themselves. They looked real good in the beginning. It's almost like they had to hit a reset against Houston. This is going to be a good game. Hopefully everybody is able to enjoy it. Personally, I think the Bills are going to take this one, and that is only because it is hard to believe in the Aaron Rodgers-led Jets, and that's not throwing shade at Aaron Rodgers. They're just very inconsistent, and it's almost as if there's no chemistry on that team unless somebody just buds and makes it happen in any given week. It's not something that they're just like, yeah, I love this. So I am a little worried about the Jets' future. They did just can Robert Saleh, which... I like Bob Saleh. I hope he lands on his feet. Hope he ends up somewhere else because I don't think that he was necessarily the issue. But I do believe the Bills are going to win, and I hope all of you have a terrific work week. Me and Meangene will see you next Sunday for the Meangene Show on 97.5 ESPN Houston.
What up, y'all? It's Joe Budden here to talk about Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best place to win real money while watching football. Season-long fantasy can take so much time, but on Prize Picks, I can pick a new lineup every day. The app is really simple to use. To create a lineup, pick more or less on at least 2 players. Prize Picks puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my lineups hit, I can get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. On Prize Picks, you can mix and match players from different sports. Combine your favorite players from football to basketball to hockey to WNBA. Prize Picks is the only daily fantasy app with injury insurance. If your player goes down in the first half, Prize Picks won't count it as a loss.
Right now, Prize Picks will give you $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. Just download the Prize Picks daily fantasy app and use code GOAL. That's code GOAL on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play a $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Must be present in certain states. Visit prizepicks.com for restrictions and details.
Your Houston area Cadillac dealers have a tremendous selection of the all-new, all-electric Cadillac Lyriq in stock with incredible lease offers that you don't want to miss. There's never been a better time for the sophistication and style of Cadillac. Pick from a huge selection of colors and features and experience the luxury and comfort of Cadillac's state-of-the-art all-electric Lyriq SUV with 500 horsepower, available hands-free Super Cruise, and 319-mile range. It's the best in class. Visit your Houston area Cadillac dealers today.
Hear that, neighbor? That's the sound of saving on your next grocery trip to Food Town. Whether you're shopping for fresh produce, quality meats, or everyday essentials, your hometown grocer makes it easy to fill your cart for less. Serving Greater Houston for 30 years with 29 locations and a store right here in New Caney on FM 1485 and US 59. Check out our weekly ad today to start saving at yourfoodtown.com.